Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. I'm back after 10 days in Spain and Europe. I'm glad to be back and greet John Cornyn, Senator from Texas, is my first guest up for re-election. In the polls, doing very well because, of course, people of Texas like competent, calm senators. John Cornyn, welcome back. Good to talk to you, Senator.
Thanks, Hugh. Welcome back.
Let me begin by asking you, I was gone for 10 days. Nobody in Europe cares about this impeachment thing. They think it's a joke. But I wrote a piece about it yesterday, and it's in the Post today. One thing I'm wondering, Adam Schiff is running a manifestly unfair game. And given that he is, could the Senate Majority Leader, with the backing of the Republicans, simply introduce a peremptory dismissal of any impeachment article referred to it because it comes out of such a manifestly flawed and unfair process?
He certainly could. It would take 51 votes to prevail, and obviously that's not a certainty. I think we're going to have to play this along to see how it works out. It could well be that the best outcome would be to let the impeachment managers present their case, which right now seems to consist of a transcript of a phone call, and then have senators on record voting. And of course, as you know, it takes a 2/3 vote to convict and to remove the president, which is not likely to happen.
Well, the reason I have an argument for doing it peremptorily, Senator, is that I'm thinking about the future, not the past. And if impeachments are allowed to become politicized show trials with secret hearings and witness manipulation and ex parte contact that is prohibited in every procedural meeting in the United States, whether it's a homeowner association or a high school discipline, and certainly in a court of law, then we're setting up ourselves for failure. But if the Senate lays down the law here, that any future impeachment must be accompanied by due process, it will do future Americans a great deal of good.
Well, I like that argument a lot. We saw in the Kavanaugh hearing, for example, something that would have become the new normal had it succeeded. And I have no doubt that if this were hypothetically to be successful in this instance, that President Elizabeth Warren would be subject to the same process. And I think we should not go down that road. I like what you're suggesting. We'll have to see how it plays out and where those 51 votes come from.
Now, the Wall Street Journal has a piece today by Jim Sensenbrenner and Steve Chaput, who's the former congressman. The Clinton impeachment was fair, and it goes back through those processes. And you were around at the time. It was fair, and he was not removed. There were a majority of senators who wanted him removed, but he wasn't removed because it wasn't near 67. But it was fair. And I'm wondering, does even one member of the GOP caucus believe this system is fair? Has even one Republican senator, I don't want you to name anyone, man or woman, has anyone said to you, John, this is a fair thing?
No, just the opposite. And of course, Adam Schiff has discredited himself and disqualified himself, in my view, to lead this effort. Nancy Pelosi is a smart, shrewd politician, and she understands what she said last January when they tabled the impeachment resolution, that it's not going to happen without buy-in by the American people on a bipartisan basis. That is not going to happen under the way that Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are conducting themselves now. And I think, here we are 1 year from the next general election, and they're going to divide the nation and spend all of our time focused on something that is going to end up a futility. It makes no sense to me, and I think there's going to be a significant backlash.
I hope you're right. Let's turn to policy. There's a new New York Times Siena poll out today that shows in a head-to-head matchup in Michigan, Donald Trump thumps Elizabeth Warren by 6%. I believe that's because it's a union state. There are a lot of union retirees. They work their whole lives for their medical plans, which they are guaranteed in retirement. Every teacher in America from a public school district probably has a pretty good health care plan. Elizabeth Warren has proposed a radical destruction of every single insurance plan in America that is held privately. Is there any way in the world that will get through the Congress and the Senate of the United States?
No way. Elizabeth Warren scares a lot of mainstream voters, and in my travels around not just Texas but around the country, I hear that often. And you're exactly right that unions negotiate these good health care plans, and she wants to outlaw them under Medicare for All, and do away with our energy revolution that's changed geopolitics for the better and made us an exporting power rather than importing oil and gas from other countries. her answers are almost exactly wrong on every count you can think of.
Now, in Texas, I am curious, Senator, because you are on the ballot. You got to care about the economy. The Wall Street Journal reports this morning that earnings tides lifts most stocks. The unemployment numbers, even I saw in Europe, they made news that they're still, you can't walk down a small-sized city or town in America and not see help wanted job. Everybody who can work, who wants to work. Is there any way that the average voter wants to gamble that away?
I sure wouldn't think so, and I hear the same thing from employers in the state, is that they're looking for workers, and we need to try to make sure that we are providing people the education and the training that they need in order to qualify for these good-paying jobs that do exist and are looking for qualified workers. To me, that's the main economic issue that we are facing leading up into the election.
And in terms of, again, you're campaigning, you're out there, what do people talk to you about? Is it all about Donald Trump, or is it about jobs?
Well, it's about what they care about the most, which is their family and their jobs and their community. They roll their eyes when they talk about, or when we talk about what's happening in Washington D.C. They believe that so much of what happens in D.C. these days is just a distraction from the real issues that they care most about, and I couldn't agree more.
So what would they react to a government shutdown if the Democrats refuse the budget, which they previously agreed to? Do people understand that in Texas, that the Democrats agreed to a deal and now they're backing away from it?
I don't think that's penetrated the way that it needs to, but boy, I hope we don't go there, because invariably the mainstream media and of course the Democrats will always blame Republicans, including the president. And you're right, they made a deal and then they backed away from it. And in this business, some confidence that you can deal with people in good faith is important to making the place function, and they are really making that extra hard right now.
Now, talk to me a little bit about that deal. What was it that the Democrats agreed to, in your understanding, and do they dare deny it right now?
Yeah, it's 2-year spending caps, and this was particularly important. The reason I supported it was because our military said they needed to be able to plan, and these continuing resolutions not only were inefficient and cost more money in the long run, but made it hard for us to improve our readiness and in an increasingly dangerous world. That's what was my motivation. But they, I think right now, just like we've seen Nancy Pelosi lose control of her troops regarding impeachment, I think the same thing is happening in the Senate. And unfortunately, it's putting the disc back in dysfunction.
So what happened? I mean, I don't think the president will ever sign a measure that prohibits him using his constitutional authority to move funds around. He's going to finish that fence whether or not the Democrats want him to.
Right.
What happens?
Well, what would happen would be a continuing resolution for the rest of the year, which is exactly the opposite of what we agreed to last summer with the Democrats. But they are just they just won't even talk to the president about this. And let's look at this holistically. This is about border security, and we still have a humanitarian crisis and tens of thousands of people. Actually, last year, 800,000 people detained at the southwestern border. And our Democratic friends just don't seem to pay any price for doing nothing. And
so,
the president's trying to do something.
Under a continuing resolution, can the president continue to move funds from the Department of Defense to build the wall?
I believe he can, unless the courts were to stop him, which I don't think they're going to do. So, yes. So really, to your point, they wouldn't be able to stop him from doing what they fear him doing the most, which is spending money for the wall.
It doesn't make a lick of sense to me unless they want to shut down, which they conceivably could. Now, Senator, let me close with you some Texas politics, because I'm on San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, all over the place. Do they even have anyone to run against you yet, or have they given up?
No, there are 10 of them so far who said they want to run, and of course the filing deadline is December the 9th. So Robert Francis O'Rourke and maybe even Julian Castro could decide to get out of the presidential race. Both of them, Bado just got out. Julian's bouncing around at 1 or 2%. So, I expect it to be a tough race, because the country is divided, and the dynamics of the election a year from now are kind of hard to predict. So we're doing everything we can to get ready.
Well, never stop your opponents when they're in the business of destroying themselves. So I kind of guess I'd like Bado and Julian to both get in there. But don't you feel kind of bad for Bado? I kind of felt bad for him on my long plane ride back from Europe yesterday. Were all the Twitter mockery. The guy went from being a rock star to being kind of the cover band at small proms.
Yeah, it was a long, hard fall from being almost a deity in the Democratic mind to being basically just folding his tent and walking out of the arena. So I mean it's a tough business, but he got increasingly radical in his desperate attempts to get some traction in the presidential race, which made him increasingly unelectable, not just in Texas but across the country. So I think it was inevitable.
So, last question, Senator. Texans never forget anything. I mean, they really don't. They remember in the Alamo 160 years later. Are they ever going to forget that Bado wanted to come get everybody's guns in Texas?
Never.
I didn't think so. Senator John Cornyn, good to talk to you. Thank you, Senator. Talk to you again soon. One of the must-wins that we've got on the Senate trip around the block coming up. I wanted to